6.10.
10.
We'll go on to 6.10. It's a little behind. Yeah, after this, we'll go ahead and do lunch, but we'll go on to this one because it's right. Yeah. So we'll do 6.10. Does that work? All right. Presentation of code enforcement final draft drone usage policies continued from December 17th, and we'll go ahead and give the floor to community development.
Miria Turner, Community Development Director. We will provide a very brief overview presentation of our development of our draft drone usage policy. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so as you guys know, we were fortunate to be funded again for a second round of Proposition 64 Cohort 3 funding for cannabis code enforcement. And that resource has provided us the funding for some specialized tools that we are utilizing for cannabis code enforcement. We started with some satellite imagery that was kind of new at the time, and now we have moved on to development of a drone program. And so we have been working on equipment purchases, training, and policy development for a little over a year. We have done extensive consultation with both our county council and Civica Law Firm, who's a law firm that is has their expertise in California code enforcement. And so we have developed a 3-part policy. The first policy is a policy on inspection warrants that outlines the process for assessing privacy expectations, scope, and legal requirements ahead of our drone use. And then policy 2 is a drone operations policy, which has detailed step-by-step processes, roles, and responsibilities for each staff person involved. And the third policy is a records retention policy, which outlines how we'll manage footage, store it, redact it, and release it when necessary. I'm just going to pass it off to Marcus for a quick kind of scope and benefits.
All right, and I will be brief as well. The scope of this, obviously, there's some issues that we have to take into account, and that's the Fourth Amendment regarding unlawful searches, and then also the expectation of privacy. So we have to balance that with also our main goal, which is collecting evidence to determine or substantiate there's a violation. So the scope of this is that we're going to basically look to be doing this from public areas, flying in public space, launching from public vantage points. We're not going to be flying over people's properties. We're going to have suspicion before we go over. We're not just going to randomly fly over people's properties. We're going to have a basis or a reasonable suspicion violations are existing or occurring on the property. We will be exercising the open field doctrine. If there's not a house on the property, the courts have said that you can go on that property. Of course, we're not going to fly over it unless we believe there are no infringements on people's rights or their expectation of privacy. But if there is an open field and it goes through the proper channels and it's in compliance with our policy, there is that small percentage where we may fly over that. Again, the purpose of this is to combat unlawful cultivation of cannabis. This is a step that we're taking to show that we are serious. Illegal cultivation of cannabis can no longer occur in this county. If you're doing it, you need to do it the right way. You need to do it in compliance with our code. And this is a tool that'll help us address that. So this is a message to the public. If you're doing this in a non-compliant manner, I would advise you to stop, and we will have this drone technology to help us make those cases and to take those actions. And then the benefits. The benefits is this will increase our efficiency. This will also aid in officer safety. No longer do we have to go on those properties or put our officers in those situations that can cause them injuries on the job and also be unsafe to their own personal health. And then also it'll help us to assess a wide vast of land rather than just walking through the property. We can do this. We can step up and be more efficient in our processes. So that's basically all I have.
And just a final note, we through this process, we're able to get 4 CDD staff members licensed as FFA pilots. So that's been a very exciting process for our team, and we just look forward to getting these drones in the air and seeing how we can improve our code enforcement division with that technology.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Supervisor Pyska.
So are we not going to use the satellite software anymore?
We are continuing to use satellite imagery that's available to us through an MOU we have with CDFW.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and is that satellite imagery and drone imagery, is that going to be used for inspections, or just the drone footage will just be reactionary if there's a complaint?
So what the purpose of the drone would be there would be a very small percentage of instances where we would just operate a drone and then substantiate a violation and issue a notice for that. The purpose of the drone is to get the evidence, to get an inspection warrant. At the end of the day, I'm of the firm belief you have to have boots on the ground. You have to be directly there to understand the extent and the scope of what is occurring and the effect it may have on surrounding property. So the purpose of the drones are to get the evidence, to get an inspection warrant, get on the property, and fully understand the issues that are occurring on that property. But there may be that small situation where the violations are very evident or very apparent, and in those cases, we may go ahead and just issue a notice based upon that. But we are aware of some jurisdictions that just issue notices based on their drone footage. They were wrong, and now they're dealing with some legal issues on that. So we're not going to fall into that trap. We're going to make sure we're on top, we have boots on the ground, and we're understanding it directly what the issue is.
Okay, so annual inspections are still going to happen in person?
Annual inspections will still happen in person, although in that regards, we have consent from the permittees, and also there's a code that says that they have to cooperate with inspection. In those cases, we would use drone, and one of our planners is licensed as a drone pilot. So in that case, we would also use it in that context as well when the planning division determines that they would like to use the drone.
Okay.
Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, thank you for being patient and bringing this back, but also for creating this policy. I just want to clarify, because I feel like you said that a CDD drone operator has the ability to just deploy a drone if they feel it meets the criteria. From what I'm reading, you need a warrant to use the drone, because it says you need CDD drone operations must obtain an inspection warrant prior to engaging in any drone operations, right?
So there's situations where inspection warrant is required, and there's situations where an inspection warrant is not required.
So that's under default procedure.
Yeah. Well,
It is the default.
Okay.
so, if there's a case where it's an open field, there's no expectation of privacy, we're in a public vantage point in a public road, we will fly it straight up and focus it in using readily available technology. To go onto the property, we would get inspection warrant. Now, those cases where there's an expectation of privacy, for example, a person's backyard, we will get an inspection warrant, and then we will fly it from the street, get the information we need, and then we will get a second inspection warrant to actually access and go onto the property.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. The purpose behind this is to find illegal grows.
Yes.
One of the major
The main
purposes is to
purpose.
find illegal grows. I'm just going to put my paranoid hat on. It says, where am I at here? In the Exhibit A, prohibited uses. I'm just wondering if we can identify specifically, we're here to take pictures, we're not here to do facial recognition, we're not here to do license plate reading, because that would be an addition to what you're already kind of set to do. I'm wondering if that can be added in the prohibited uses to ensure we're not enhancing our technology without checking in as to, is this part of our privacy guidelines, that we're not directed to identify human beings, we're here to identify plants. At this moment in time, until further necessary warrants or inspections are needed, the basis for this use is to identify, am I looking at cannabis plants without a permit?
So a lot of times cannabis plants, you can't see those. What you see is the infrastructure, and it's an area conducive for cultivation. And you see high fences, you see water tanks, you see hoop houses, you see things that are conducive to growing. So the drone would get up there, give us that information, then we would use that for an inspection warrant, get on there, actually determine that those are cannabis plants. They're not hemp plants, they're not zucchinis, they're not cucumbers, they're not tomatoes. There are instances where people put hoop houses up and grow vegetables that are legal and can be grown. So the issue is to get up there, determine that we have the probable cause to get an inspection warrant, go on there, determine that they are cannabis plants, and then determine how many plants there are, and so that we can prepare a notice of violation, the proper notice of violation for the penalty for cultivating without the proper permits or in compliance.
Well, my request would be, if the board so says, to identify the specific purpose of just taking pictures for the identification of cannabis plants, illicit cannabis production, not for facial recognition, not for any other purpose, unless warrant specifies, or I don't know, the technology is moving fast. The technology has potential uses that is very intrusive in ways that we need to be wary about. And I don't see anything that prohibits that type of usage in what I'm reading. And my second comment is on reporting. I don't see any report back to the Board of Supervisors. For example, when you guys have an emergency abatement that you do, you are mandated to come back to the board and let us know about it. I think that's a little much to ask you to come every single time you need to use it, but it would be nice to get an annual report. How many times have you used the drone? I don't need to know the properties, but for example, during our government workshop, would be great to get an annual report of what kind of uses, what kind of issues have you seen, just to better understand how this is benefiting us, because it's such a sensitive technology that is being used. That would be my request for any potential changes to the policies.
I'm okay with it.
Thank you for that.
There's a policy update.
Did you have any?
I have a recommendation then, if we are to become more specific regarding the purpose, that we do not place it within the prohibited uses, but rather more towards the beginning where we're stating the purpose of the policy. That way it wouldn't be as limiting. And the prohibited uses already does specify that we're not to harass a certain person, we're not to capture somebody or go after somebody based on their personal characteristics. And so, but it would be consistent with the spirit of implementing this policy to have that more detailed information towards the beginning.
I'm good with that.
Right? Any other comments from the board? Anyone from the public would like to speak on this? Open it up.
Yeah, I hear things that don't make sense. I usually think, well, maybe there's something wrong, and I try to do research on it. I want to use the word, 1985, I was in the College of Sequoias. My geology teacher, just jokingly to us, said, ladies, they have satellites in the sky that can see you in your backyard in your bikini, so smile and wave. So what I don't understand is that's 1985, and we have satellites that can determine that back then. We don't need this technology is what I look at this. I'm trying to save the county money. Thank you.
Any other folks in the chambers? Anybody on Zoom? Or actually, go ahead, come up.
I just want to make a comment, to what you had mentioned, facial recognition. The drones that we have purchased do not have facial recognition within it, where that's not something that the drones are capable of doing.
Appreciate that.
Again, I want to emphasize, there's no enhanced technology on our drones. We didn't purchase drones with enhanced technology. This is commonly available, readily available technology that anybody can possess. And I do also want to give some context here. These grows are not occurring in areas that usually have expectation of privacy. They're usually out in remote areas, away from houses, away from kind of in the rural areas. And so because they're in that areas, that decreases the level of expectation of privacy and infringing or being intrusive.
I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
This is a drone policy. not about a specific drone type. And as we move forward in the years and we do get a new drone, it might have that technology. And I think anyone, no matter what property you're on, whether it's in the middle of nowhere, if it's your private property, you deserve a certain level of privacy. So I think that it's a sensitive technology. I want to put it in your hands to put it to good use. And I think it will be used appropriately, but when things are in writing, it just makes sure that it holds ourselves accountable to what exactly are we planning to do with the technology we're wanting to utilize.
I think I understand now. You're thinking about future in future instances, or
Because it doesn't speak to the specific drones that you have, it's just a drone policy as a whole.
okay.
All right, so if there's no one else on Zoom or anything like that, I'll bring it back to the board. I think this is a presentation, so I don't think there's any action that needs to be done. So,
I know that I wasn't sure if there was three.
yeah, there was.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
As for recommendation. or something.
yeah, for the report and for the update to the purpose.
Right. So with that, thank you again for another presentation. All right, so I will open public comment to allow for a Zoom. All right, please unmute and state your name for the record. And after this, I will close public input.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I might have raised my hand a little late. My name's Angela Emerald. I just had a question about the drones. In areas where you cannot launch from a public, Marcus, you were saying that you would launch from a public field or a public area. What is the range on these drones? Because some of these areas don't have a public area. I think you know where I'm talking about, but they don't have a public area where you can launch from. So what is the average distance these drones can go? And how do you address it when a parcel that you're trying to look at is surrounded by private property?
So a public vantage point is anything that a person that can commonly access. It could be an easement, it could be a roadway, it could be a hill area, it could be a public area that's not fenced off, it could be an open field. But when we do get to the urban areas, this is where we have a code supervisor who will be in the field overseeing a code enforcement officer, and the instructions and the use of the drone will be specific to that property which we have reasonable suspicion of violation is occurring. The drone will then go up, it will then focus down on that property, it will focus on that area. It will be specific to that area, it will not try to go into other people's areas. And really that's the only best way I can answer that question. Now, there is going to be a learning curve. Drone technology and case law has not caught up to the uses of drone and drone technology. I think recent events in the news have brought that all to our forethought and attention. So we are going to be responsible when doing this. We respect our residents. We are not in a position and not going to violate their rights. We are going to do this in a responsible manner, and we're going to make sure that we do it by the book and also by the guidance of our county council, and make sure that we have reasonable suspicion and make sure that we're only capturing that property. If there are instances where other issues are captured, we will go through the proper steps to remedy that situation. But again, the goal and the intent is to use it not in densely populated areas. It's more for those rural areas where the bigger cultivation is occurring.
All right. With that, public input is closed. I think if there's no other comments, I think we'll go ahead and close this item on the agenda, and we'll go to a lunch break. I appreciate the presentation again.